an end of season Forever Bristol City podcast special. We had an end of season review at the end of March, and then things seemed to be going swimmingly until Saturday's 4-0 reverse. Joining me for this season debrief and a look forward to the next season and what might happen over the next 13 weeks is former player, regular pundit on various media, Gary Hours. Welcome, Gary. My regular cohort on this, Ian, and Paul Hunt. Paul, I've known for many years and a City fan for 30 plus, so well qualified to talk, and good to have you on for the first time, Paul. I know you've got a young family and that makes it difficult to come on, but I've been trying to get you on for a while. But there we go. Gentlemen, I'm going to start with you, Paul. Expectations in August, top half finish, which we've got. How do you feel we ended up from your perspective?
I'm a borderline happy clapper, a bit of an optimist. So I was looking, if it all went really well, we might have made the playoffs at the start of the year, probably with a realistic head on about where we've ended up. Maybe 8th, 9th, 10th would have been realistic expectations, I would have thought.
Yeah. Gary, what did you think? I mean, some City fans were predicting sort of big things. We always go in with hope, but it wasn't too bad, really, was it? Or was it?
Well, realistic expectations. It had to be at least the top half. I think we all knew that we were going to lose Alex Scott, and probably all waited with much anticipation to see, in the first instance, when he would leave, how much he would go for, and how much was reinvested. But that didn't really materialise, and obviously we had the change mid-season, and we finished 11th, which is obviously based on facts, three places higher than last season and 3 points better off, so you can't argue with that. But all in all, I just think it's a very, very small step forward.
Baby steps. Ian, that finish was our third best in the 9 successive seasons we've now had at this level. If I recall what Richard Latham said, this is very much a mid-table squad, and we are where we are. But just to reflect, we've said this many times on the pod, but 4 steps, baby steps forward. It's still progress, isn't it? After 3 years of pretty awful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Gary, I remember Gary saying on Radio Bristol last year, and I totally agree with him. We can't keep finishing a place or a couple of places higher than we were the season before and saying that's real progress, because let's be honest, it's not. My expectation at the start of the season was probably top half. With the sides coming down, and with the strength and the financial backing that they've got, because I mean, for example, Dave, you're in the recruitment business. If I started a recruitment business tomorrow, I wouldn't know anything like you. I haven't got your ability in the industry, but if somebody handed me 42 million quid, I'd have a real good go at doing better than you did. And I think that's what we've got to keep remembering. And it's not just the sides that come down with 42 million, it's the sides that haven't gone back up, and they still get a bum of about 30 million the next season, and 16, 17 million the season out of that. So what I've done, and it's come hard, is I've had to be very realistic about my expectations about what the club can do, and stay within financial fair play.
Okay. All right.
But no, I mean, if you look at our form over the last 10 games of the season, that's playoff form. So I'm more enthused about having that form. Yeah, we could have all done without that 4-0 result at the end of the season, but Cardiff could have done without the 5-2, and I think Man United could have done without the 4-0 spanking last night.
Yeah.
And the first thing Ten Hag said after the game was something else I know you're going to come on to: injuries. Yeah. And when you look at his squad, he's got half a squad out.
Let's come on to injuries. Paul, other than the Cardiff game, which effectively ended up costing Nigel his job, okay, the manager didn't always fill the bench, but have injuries decimated our season, or is it just we have to cope with it just like any other club? Do you think, first time I've asked you this question, do you think we have more injuries than most, and do we seem to deal with them effectively from your point of view?
I think over a period of seasons, we seem to have had more injuries, like loads of injuries every season, a bit less maybe this season. You always get injuries. You can't say you're not going to get injuries. Like, you can't say, well, we got this player and then we got too many players and how are they all going to fit in, because some of them are going to get injured during the season. So everyone's going to end up getting a game eventually because of the injuries. So I don't really know. I mean, you know about Newcastle were decimated by injuries, weren't they, in the Premier League, even though they play less games than we do. I don't really know the Championship, if I'm honest, how the other teams, how much injuries they get compared to us. You think they'd be turning over every stone. Is it something to do with the grass at the HBC or something like that? I don't know. You think they'd be looking at everything, wouldn't they? Because we've got lots of talent who haven't been on the pitch all season. We've almost got like 3 new players next season if they come fit for the start of the season.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one. Gary, you've been in the game. None of us have. We do seem to have. This has been going on ever since we've been at the HPC, and it seems. But then in the broader football world, there seem to be more injuries that are happening. Maybe that's the pace of the game, but losing. I mean, Naismith's availability record has been appalling in the 2 years he's been here. Rob Atkinson, he's been out for it'll be 18 months by the time the season gets back. But when you look at, some of the players defensively, we've done okay Saturday apart. So we've sort of make do and mend by having players that are adaptable, haven't we? Particularly at the back end of the pitch.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of points. Firstly, I probably wouldn't necessarily agree that the Cardiff game was the reason Nigel lost his job. Clearly, there were other issues. Talking about injuries, Cal Naismith, I think, has played 13 games this season, which isn't enough. And over the last 2 or 3 seasons, it's apparent that we have picked up a lot of soft tissue injuries for whatever reason. If you do your cruciate, Rob Atkinson, you do your cruciate, that's very, very unfortunate. And that's probably a totally different reason to pick up that injury, other than the amount of sort of strains that we seem to pick up and possibly training ground injuries as well. So, yeah, they've moved to a new training ground. Of course, we heard Mark Ashton was going to have a review. I'm not sure where that got to or if it ever even took place. And I'm sure we've heard other people talking about that in the last couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting. Different set of sports scientists, different training methods, but clearly there is a connection, and City have to try and find out what that is.
Yeah. No, and saying, no, you're absolutely right, Gary. The Cardiff result didn't cost Nigel his role. It was the fact that I think he lost 5 out of 7 and other things, which I think we've done Nigel's departure to death. I think we're all in agreement on this, that even the people at the very top of the club, with the benefit of hindsight, it could have been handled a hell of a lot better than what it was. But good to see Nigel looking back on full fitness on Sky as a match analyst. Paul, they say Ian, sorry, and injuries. Just to wrap up on that, I think somebody said on Saturday having Naismith and Atkinson available because they've been out pretty much the whole season. That's like 2 new signings in its own right. Now you'll say probably that, well, we've lost those 2 for a year. Our luck, our track record, we're going to have another 2 that we'd be without for a similar period, yeah?
And don't forget Eamon Benarous. Poor guy's going to be out for about 2.5 years by the time he comes back. And I thought he was very promising before he got injured. It has been a problem. I mean, that game at Cardiff, there were 11 players out injured. Joe Jones is 16, made his debut at right back. Sykes, who for me is a wide right midfield player, and that's it, shifted over to play left back. He wasn't too bad that game. He wasn't great on Saturday, I have to say, but he wasn't on his own. But we've had 6 players injured virtually every week, and we did it again. We had as soon as players came back, players went out. So on Saturday, we were missing, in terms of valuable players and players you'd expect to see in the starting lineup, a lot, Cam Pring and Matty James. And I'm saying now, if those 2 had been playing, we wouldn't have lost that game 4-0.
No,
particularly
right.
Matty James, because he's a bit like Cole Scouse. That I always used to say, you don't notice what Cole Scouse does until he's not there, and you got people running through your midfield free as a bird, and their guys had so much space on Saturday. I mean, the wing backs played so far up the pitch, they were up in front of the strikers. So I don't know what that was about. But leaving that to one side, at one point in the season where we had Dean Holden, and then Dean got sacked and Nigel came in, we had 21 players out at one time. And nearly all of them with fairly serious injuries. I mean, when I say serious, I mean ACL, hamstring, things you're not going to get over in a fortnight. And I don't know what the solution is. We've got a new medical director going in to replace Dave Rennie, going to start in the summer. On the interview we did with Gavin Marshall, he said they'd be in a position to announce it soon. So let's hope he can come in and look at the fitness and conditioning. Are we putting too much weight through the players' legs? Are they over conditioned? Are they under conditioned? Are they training too much? Are they training too little? I don't pretend to know what the answer is, and a great number of people who know 10 times as much about football, or they've probably forgotten 10 times as much about football as I'll ever know. They seem baffled as well, Dave.
Well, somebody at the very hierarchy.
The only thing is, I will say, the way to cure it, if we can't cure it, and we're always going to have 6 players out, you can't go on thinking you're going to go zonking up the table with a small squad. It just doesn't make sense. And no matter how good, I mean, we got a lot of really good under 18s coming through, but are they going to be able to buoy it up next season, or do we actually need 2 or 3 more players in than we think we're signing? So that would be my only comment.
We'll talk about the squad in a minute, and you say we've got a small squad. You know, we didn't fill the bench on numerous occasions. Paul, what did you think? You know, what would you give Manning? He's been in charge for over half a season now. If you're giving him a school mark, is he an A-, a B+, a C+? Where is he on your rating?
That's a good question. I think he's a B, maybe a B+.
Yeah. How did you feel? How did you feel at the end of March going into that international break?
Awful. That was terrible, wasn't it? The Malays games were really bad. I thought we'd made the wrong appointment at that stage. It just seemed like it was awful to watch. It was boring. We were losing every week. I just couldn't work out what had gone wrong, because he started okay and then it just went downhill, didn't it, over a few games, and it was really terrible football. The players looked frightened. They didn't play with any confidence. The fans were on their back every week, and it was, you know, you go into the games and you're almost dreading it for the fan reaction to what the players were going to do, and you couldn't see a way out of it, really. And I think the international break was obviously a massive blessing in disguise, wasn't it? He must have reflected and taken on. I know he's not on social media, and he says he's not, but he must get feedback somewhere, and he changed such a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, no, he did. What did you? I heard you on Radio Bristol around about March, and you used the word toxic, Gary. And I mean, you must have in your career seen similar situations. I mean, is the one that, then talk about City in a minute, but going back on your career, can you remember playing in that sort of environment where you're thinking, Christ, the crowd are on us, the manager's under pressure, we're not enjoying it? And
every week at Sunderland when we're getting beat, they didn't have as much patience up there, I can tell you. So, toxic. I don't know if I said that, but it was horrible. I didn't enjoy it. You know, the manager was under pressure, and so was the hierarchy. And I think it got to the point where he changed. He changed from, we keep hearing about front foot football and high press. I think he set up his teams not to get beat because he couldn't afford to get beat. He went 3 centre halves, 5 at the back. Even, you know, you look at the system, and at times 5-4-1 out of possession, and that Swansea game, you should never complain when you win a game and get 3 points, but that wasn't a good watch. So he had a couple of weeks breathing space that done him the world good. Even I think how he come out and tried to portray himself, Liam Manning, that some of the language, the vocabulary about taking the I didn't like that. You've got
taking the emotion out of it. You mean?
Like, come on. If you took the emotion out of football when I was a player, I would have done something else, because you have to play with emotion. You have to have emotion and passion. And if you come out and said you have to control it, yeah, I get that, but not take the emotion out of it. And I sort of tried to explain how I felt about that. So I think maybe a little bit of a quiet word in his ear as well behind the scenes. Come on, you've got to try and get your message across a little bit.
Do you think that happened, Gary? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think that happened?
Someone I'd had to say, look, we've got to try and get this message across a little bit better. His substitutions, it became more proactive. I always reference the West Brom game, 2-0 down, waited till we're 2-0 down, tried to make some changes. And the last 2 changes always stuck in my mind, changing the 2 full-backs or the wing-backs, trying to get back from 2-0 down. And I'm thinking, is that a substitution from the sports scientists to protect players? But it's not in my book is a change to try and win the game. And then all of a sudden, we've seen them making changes at half-time. We even seen him change the system at Plymouth. And a couple of them decisions got him the results that he needed.
Do you think he's learning on the job, Gary? I'm not saying at the fans' expense, because if you pick the champagne moments, there's the cup run, there's the Southampton win, there's the Leicester win, there's the Blackburn win. You know, we're just sucking it up and seeing a man learning his trade.
Yeah, I don't like that expression at this level to come in and sort of lead a club, hopefully towards the Premier League, and to use that term, it sounds like he's inexperienced, and you know he's got the job on merit, so he's got to be ready to go and be able to make the decisions. I'm sure, yes, you learn something in life. You learn something every day, don't you? But I really don't like that term, learning on the job. But things improved. Things definitely improved, and Ian rightfully said, if the last 10 games are promotion form, great, but the 10 games before that were relegation form, and that probably sums up the season, and the reason why we aren't any higher is because of the inconsistencies.
Ian, do you think, well, not do you think, bleeding obvious really, that 8-game run that we had in the run-up to the season, that was a get-out-of-jail card, probably not only for Liam, but for the hierarchy as well, who backed their man. If you look at those performances, yeah, whilst there was some good ones in there, they were lucky they didn't get eyed in at Sunderland. The game against Huddersfield at home was pretty poor. Yes, Plymouth was a dirty 1-0 away win, and they beat Blackburn 5-0. They beat, at the time, a failing Leicester side as well. But that sort of avoided that good run, as you said, promotion form. You know, it avoided any panic changes that might have been bubbling under the surface in the eyes of the fans, anyway.
You know, the fading Leicester team that, lest we forget, won the championship. So they're not a bad side, were they? And we should have. I know people said, well, Max made some good saves from Vardy. Their keeper made some good saves, and we should have had 2 penalties. But leaving that aside, I think, you know, you'd say about school marks, you'd give him an A+ for the performances against Southampton, Blackburn, Leicester, and then you give him a D- for the performances against QPR at home. Millwall was dreadful. But that's football.
Yeah.
And I see teams that have spent a huge amount more than we have and who pay a lot more in terms of wages doing exactly the same thing. And boards are trigger fingered sometimes. We've seen one today with Rossinier, and they jump. And in the same way that Sunderland's board jumped when they were sixth in the table, and I still say they're the best team I've seen at Ashton Gate this season. If they'd have had a centre, if they'd have had Tommy Conway or Naki Wells playing for them at Ashton Gate this season, they'd have put 6 past us, easy.
And that was under Tony Mowbray. That was under Tony Mowbray.
Well, that was Mowbray's team, but he'd just been fired, and it was under the interim guy whose name I've forgotten. But they sacked Mowbray. He was 6th. I mean, look at the guy at Birmingham they fired to get John Eustace to get Rooney in there, who's then a complete disaster. Poor old Tony Mowbray's gone in, been taken ill. His assistant Mark Venus couldn't do it, so they had to bring back a guy they'd fired previously and went to Millwall, and now they're relegated. So sometimes I think we've got to be thankful that we've got owners that don't jump the gun and aren't trigger fingered and aren't firing people after they've had 3 or 4 bad games. But I'll tell you one thing that coincided with that improvement was James and Twine coming back in the side.
Yeah.
And up until Saturday, we'd never lost when Twine started a game. Now that might be a coincidence, but I certainly think, and it also showed the value that Matty James brought with that calmness and that bit of control. So, you know, that it's how managers go. I mean, I hated the games that we've alluded to when we went on the losing run, but I really enjoyed the ones when we played really well. And I suppose that's football and that's managers.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we had the 4th best defence in the division, and the problem is clearly up front where we can't score goals. And another good performance in that run, if you're going to take the cup half full approach, was away at Norwich City, because we gave them a bloody good game as well. So, you know, that's the thing.
There was a couple of other people I thought, sort of Jason Knight dropping a little bit deeper. That definitely had
that made a difference.
And the biggest plus, and whether it's luck or good fortune, was Hayden Roberts coming into the team as a left side centre half, because I never seen that. And I'll say it again: there's no way he was signed in the summer as a left sided centre half, and they've sort of not stumbled across it because he's a very good player, but they've put him in there and he's excelled. And I think that was one of the big pluses going in towards the end of the season.
Yeah, Paul,
definitely.
Paul, what do you think? Ian says coincidence that we didn't lose when Scott Twine played, other than Saturday. He has got better.
Well, I said it could have, Dave. I said it could have been a coincidence.
It could have been. It could have been.
It was a fact nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, would you sign Scott Twine? And if the answer is yes, or is it dependent on how much is he worth in your head in today's market?
I would definitely sign him. I think he's just what we need. We have this problem where we can't beat the low block, and he's been brought in for that. I don't think we've even seen the best of him yet because of the injury. And when he came back, he was getting better and better and better after the injury. So I would definitely sign him. I mean, I've heard people say 2 million, 2.5 million. I think if you have to go to 3-4 million, maybe even 5, I think from what Manning says as well, he definitely wants him there. I mean, there'll come a point when he's too expensive and we have to look elsewhere, but I think he's just what we need. He's a local lad as well from Swindon. Yeah. He seems to enjoy being there. We know what he's all about. He seems to fit into the team. If it's a lot of it depends on Burnley, doesn't it?
It's interesting what you say about local lad, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think Ollie Watkins is a local lad as well. And I'm sure that when we signed this player called Watkins at the time, the board thought, oh, we got Ollie Watkins at last. And it was bloody Marley Watkins. But that's by the by. I put an interesting one. I was chatting to Neil Sutton, who comes on the podcast a lot. And we were talking about who potential suitors might be for Conway. And I'll come to you in a second on this, Gary. But one thing that I said, Paul, was that what about Conway? What if Burnley, because they're going to get relegated, what if Burnley came along and said, actually, you can have Scott Twine. We want Tommy Conway. So you give us Conway, we'll give you Twine and £1 million. I think that'd be a bit of good business. What do you think, Paul?
Yes, I think I'd agree with that. I was thinking, that did cross my mind before earlier when I was thinking through things, because some of the other thing with Conway is if we get in this number 9 and number 10 that they're talking about, and they can't not get them in now because Brian Tinnion's talked about it, and the fan base would just be devastated if we didn't bring them in. So if the number 9 comes in, whoever it is, they're going to play. So where's Conway going to play? Is he just going to be a backup to that number 9, or is he going to slot into one of the 2 10 slots behind him? I know he's played there with Sam Bell before, but he's almost, from the player he is at the moment, and I'm sure there's much more improvement to come from him, he doesn't fit naturally into the formations we're playing. So if that was the only option to get Twine, and there was no other way to get him, then yes, I'd sign.
What do you think of that? What do you think of that one, Gary?
No, not for me. I think first and foremost, you've got to try and keep Tommy Conway. 2 separate issues. Again, going back to Burnley. Burnley might have a different stance now because they won't be in a hurry to offload players to their rivals because they're going to get relegated and they're going to have to try and win lots of games to get promoted again. So that might make it a little bit more difficult. They might hang out for a little bit more money because for the reasons I've explained. But and I wouldn't. Why would you? If you sort of selling, swapping your leading goal scorer to a team in your own division, aren't you just shooting yourself in the foot a little bit and making life easier for the better team? Try and keep him. But I've said it and I'll stick by it. If they get wind, he's not signing, they've got to sell him in the summer. I keep hearing people say, keep him for a year because, for the sake of 3 or 4 million. But that's not a good situation for the club to have a player that will have an eye on his next move. And I'm not saying he wouldn't be fully committed because he would be. But he's in a difficult position. Players can get injured. It's an occupational hazard. Yeah. So that's not a good scenario for anyone. So if he's not signing, wherever he's going to go, we keep hearing about Scotland. I think that will be in the back of his mind because I think he wants to get and become a full Scottish international, which he's more than capable of. So. Yeah, that's one for the club.
Do you think a move? I mean, you were at Sunderland as a youngster, and then you moved after 330 games to come down here. Yeah. Do you think a move is sometimes good for the man because you make that break? He's been associated with the club since he was an 8-year-old. You were at Sunderland a very long time. Yeah.
Too long. Yeah. So I went past not my sell-by date, hopefully, but I went past the point where there was lots of big clubs interested, and then I unfortunately did get injured at the wrong time, and then all of a sudden you lose a little bit of confidence, and in turn you lose a little bit of form, and it's all of a sudden it's not looking so rosy, and you have to think about other things. So yeah, there's definitely a time, and over the years maybe City haven't been great at that and have held on to sort of players that could have sold for more money. I think Maynard springs to mind. So there is a time to sell as well.
Ian, you were putting your thumbs up there for those that are watching on trying everything to keep Tommy. I mean, what you make him the highest paid player at the club to keep him, which in many respects is probably cheaper than actually going out and trying to find a player to replace him.
Well, my understanding is that we are going to sign a 9 and a 10, but we want Tommy and Joe to stay. I'm not so clear on Matty James whether we could do a 1 season deal, and we know we got Max Bird coming in that to play in that area. We've also got Adam Murphy coming through, and we've got Josh Stokes, who's a 10. But I mean, expecting those two lads to come and play in the Championship, especially week in and week out, I think is a really big ask. But obviously, that'll be down to people. Well, it'd be down to Liam Manning. If he thinks they're ready, he'll play them. But yeah, I think we should do our best to sign them and still bring in the 9 and the 10. In terms of the deal you spoke about with Burnley, this is according to a well-connected Burnley journalist. Burnley will need to sell a lot of players when they come down, and they need money because they've got a fair bit of debt. Their owners don't want to stick a load more money in. And his take on it, I mean, they've got some players on loan that will leave, and his take on it is that, yeah, they'll spend some money, but they're losing some players they don't want to lose. For example, Josh Brownhill's out of contract and don't look like he's going to sign another one. So, no, I'd like to keep Tommy. I think the combination between Tommy and Scott Twine is getting better and better and better. If we've got another talented forward to play next to Tommy, we went from playing 2 10s and a striker to 2 strikers and a 10. I think that could be even better, because you're right, our goal scoring record is poor. There's no two ways to talk about that. Defensively, we're sound. We've got lots of defenders, especially when we get people like Naismith and Atkinson fit. So no, I'd be looking to strengthen the squad, and you don't do that by letting players like Conway and Williams go. Obviously, look, if we're every Championship club in virtually every club in the Premier League. I mean, I was listening to somebody from Palace, and they've already put a price tag on Elise and Eze. They've already said anybody wants them is 65 million each. So they know that people are circling, but what they're saying is, well, okay, it's going to cost you. And if you've seen them last night, those two players walk into Manchester United's team.
So I think half our team would, the way they're playing at the moment.
Well, if you look at our play, if somebody comes in with a huge bid like we got for Alex Scott, the club as it stands cannot afford not to sell, and you won't keep the players anyway, because Alex Scott was offered an awful lot of money to stay at Bristol City, but I can tell you for a fact that he's earning 3 times what he was offered at Bournemouth.
Yeah, well, we know
not 3 times what he was on. Yeah, 3 times what he was offered.
Yeah, no, I believe that. It's like Adam Webster.
You're not gonna keep them, and they want to play. Antoine and Alex wanted to play Premier Division football, and if I was a young man now, so would I.
Yeah, he's seen them do that, and his head's obviously been turned. Paul, in the January transfer window, we don't even want to talk about Deirdre Mabude. I mean, that's one for one of Gary and Jeff Twentyman's nights in about 10 years' time, if they're still doing them. What's the backstory on Dyer Mabude? But we've got Twine was in the shop window for us. You didn't want him to play too well because his price would go up. Yeah, but he's just about got it right. Murphy, he played today, and as a couple of people have said on OTIB, somebody said on here today, he played quite well. Bird scored a cracking goal for Derby on the last game of the season. I mean, he's coming here, reuniting with Knight again. Stokes, when you get a player like Rob Dickey saying he's the best footballer he's been with, he's seen. Now, you didn't say at his age. You just said one of the best footballers I've ever seen. Yeah, well, I haven't heard the quote exactly, but that's my take. We got to do something special in the summer to improve the side. I'll come on to Gary with the same question because I heard him say something the other night. We can't, if you look with everybody fit, there's bound to be 2 out by the first game of the season. Ian has said, you have said this, Ian, we need to have 2 players in each position for a big squad. I think the interchangeability.
Wait a minute. Let me just say what I actually said. We need to have 2 players available in each position.
Available for each position, yeah. With the interchangeability of the defence, because, never mind Atkinson, he's been out for a year, and Naismith, they could all move around. We can play a 4 or 5 or whatever. But what do you think? What do you think's required in the summer, Paul, to improve it? Because you can't, unless you get lucky, you can't go out and find another. We might be able to a Rob Dickey or somebody like that bargain. Or is there a bargain out there? Any players you'd like to see come in?
I don't know too much about players of other teams, if I'm honest. I know Dave Febbs did a brilliant thread on X or Twitter this morning, which I'd recommend everyone read, about other players from other teams that he could see playing for us, and that's quite food for thought. But that is well worth a read to me. I think the last 2 transfer windows, they've done quite good, the recruitment team. There's been more successes than there has failures over last summer and January, if you take Mabudi out of it. And at the end of the day, he was alone as well. So it was obviously a punt. It's not someone we've signed and we're stuck with. We all know it's up front where we need the help, and they've identified that. So we know what's coming, the 9 and the 10. I think we're shopping in Europe, aren't we, for better value? We're probably still shopping in League One as well, rather than established Championship players, or we might have some in League One who have Championship experience. But over the last 2 windows, I'm sort of quietly impressed with how we've done. We've had some good signings, really.
Okay. Gary, if Conway stays and we sign Twine, and then you look at, and we keep one or other of Joe Williams or Matty James, yeah? And then you look at Bird and you got Taylor Gardner Hickman, we've got that squad of a decent size, I think. Yeah. And I think you said on Radio Bristol when you were doing a similar review to what we're doing tonight, and Richard Lathan said the same. We're looking for a marquee signing or somebody of substance to show intent. But that seems countercultural to the way the board have spent at the moment.
Yeah, there's got to be some money spent. That nothing was spent really, was it? Alex Scott money, however much is going to be released into the coffers. We talk about the centre forward. So I'll watch Sheffield Wednesday and someone like Ugbo, somebody of that ilk through the middle. And I think we're crying out for a left-sided attacking player. And I know they'll say Mehmeti plays on the left, but he's right-footed. Sykes is right-footed. Twine is right-footed. But I just think that gives you more balance, different options, more flexibility. It'll be interesting because the form of Hayden Roberts might just plant a little seed that what happens if someone comes in for Cam Pring? Would they make that sacrifice? Because one of them, come the start of the season, won't be very happy sitting on the bench. I can tell you that for nothing. And then, defensively, we look strong if everybody's fit, like Ian says. Talk about more pressure. Max was ever present this season, and I thought he'd come on. He's formed towards the end of the season, take where the last game was good. But I think it would do him good to work with an experienced goalkeeper, whatever the situation is. If they can find somebody that's happy to come in initially as a number 2. But it's that central striker, isn't it? That's the one that we keep hearing about, and that we need someone to score 20 goals, and then we need someone to come in behind him with 15 goals. Yeah, that's the key.
But then, how do you fit these? Let's say we kept Conway and we signed Twine, and then you look at the back. And again, Ian's point of it's all about players being available. but the defence sort of picks itself. If you started on day one of the season with a midfield three of Bird, Knight, and Joe Williams or Matty James, those three, and then you got Scott Twine and Conway, to get better than that, you've got to,
Yeah, I think you've got to try and mix it up. I mean, we're almost talking about the same team that we've had this season there, aren't we? And we need some different ingredients, I think. So, the signings have got to be, I said last night, they've got to be better players than what we've got. They can't just be, we're talking about recruitment. Look at Taylor Gardner-Hickman. What did we pay for him? £1 million?
Yeah.
And he come in and with all due respect, he's ended the season as a squad player.
Yeah.
We took Harry Cornick last January window. He, most of his 32 appearances, I think, as a sub this season. So you've got to bring people in. Yeah, you need a squad for sure. You need competition. Picking the team, that was your original question, I guess. That's what the manager's there for. But he's got to have the right ingredients to bake his best cake, if you like.
No, it is difficult. Ian, we mentioned Cornick. Gary mentioned Cornick just then. Mehmeti, Sykes, they're all good squad players here. Do you see any of those moving on? Like somebody said about Portsmouth come in for somebody like just got promoted, get somebody like Harry Cornick. Would we want to move somebody like him on? Mehmeti?
Well, there's interest in Cornick. I think that in terms of Anis, I think Liam likes him. And when Liam Manning came in, I said, well, if he's a good coach, I want to see him get a tune out of Anis Mehmeti, because he was on his way out. Let's be honest, he was on his way out the club, and I think Aidan Roberts might have been going out on loan as well. So you can't knock the bloke for the way those two players and Joe Williams, for me, have radically improved since Liam Manning came in. Now, because when we saw Aidan Roberts the first time, you remember when we played Coventry at home and he lined up at left wing back, and we came out, and for the first half we played like a load of blokes that had never met before, and they'd learnt the formation they were playing about 5 minutes before the game. And I thought, Jesus, that kid isn't much, is he? And then when you see him now, and if we'd have paid 5 or 6 million for him, you'd be quite chuffed. So I think we need to give him some credit for that. I mean, it's obvious when you watch us play, we need somebody who can link play in the 9, and that's not Tommy's game. And we need somebody who, I mean, they used to call it back to goal, didn't they? But we don't just want a head on the stick. They want somebody that can run.
And we've got that option, Ian. I know you don't like using the term head on the stick, but we got that option with Seb Palmer Holden coming back. He's a young,
but he's very young, and they'll have to make a decision. If we bring in a 9 and we've still got the same strikers, when's he going to play? I mean, it's all right having a lad on the bench, but would he be better off going out and having a season somewhere else, perhaps in League One? Because he was Newport's Young Player of the Season, so you can say that's been very successful in getting him out on loan. But no, I think I wouldn't be surprised, as well as the 9 in the 10, if we look for somebody who could play wide on the right. And I think that's why Mabude was brought in. God knows why he hasn't got on the pitch, because Mark Sykes hasn't been in the best of form.
No.
Since he came back from that injury. I have no idea. The only guy who could tell you why he hasn't got on the pitch is Liam Manning.
Well, I think it might be contractual, so probably the only bloke who could say why he's not got on the pitch is Brian Tinian, actually, if he deals with player matters. But
Liam Manning's open to. I mean, the last thing I would think, I'm not putting words into Brian Tinian's mouth, but the last thing he'd want is to have signed somebody in the transfer window and the bloke don't get in the team. I mean, he got on once for 20 minutes playing wide on the left, and he's he's pretty. I mean,
Okay.
he's a very quick right winger. But what has happened there? That's just an absolute mystery to me, and it seems most other people.
Do you think that's
we'll find.
anything to be concerned about, though? It's a slight worry that somebody actually thought he was good enough to bring in and get into the team and make a difference, and actually he's got nowhere near.
And the only person who had a real understanding, that must have been a Liam Manning instigated move, because he hadn't had a playing record worthy of making any judgments on anyway since he left Man City, and that's where Liam saw him. And maybe
Liam Manning's got final say on all the players that come into the club. Not, I hasten to add, not the ones that go out.
No,
that's a decision taken above his head.
They can't have scouted Mabude because he just hasn't been getting on a pitch. Paul, coming back to you, right, and getting forwards, take away the Andy Vyman season, which, WSM, if we had that forward line with this season's defence, it might be a different story. But if you look back, over the time that we've been at this level, we've had two strikers that have been that prolific, and one of them was Jonathan Kodjia, and the other one was Tammy Abraham, Now one was a loan and one was a chunky bit of business, and you think we got Kodjia when we were after Andre Gray and Dwight Gale, so typical City going cheap. What about the loan market? Is there another Tammy out there that is so bloody good that he can make a difference, and you're not committing to a 3-year contract? You may be paying the top wage, but you've not got that 3-year commitment that looks like we've been saddled with Cal Naismith, and his availability. What's your view on the loan market?
Well, they seem more open to loans now, don't they? Nigel Pearson didn't want to do the loans, first of all, because he didn't think the culture within the club was strong enough to take loan players coming in. And then I think it was him who emphasised the cost of loan players. Even these young loan players would be on more money than some of our more experienced players. And one of his things was to try and even up, have more parity within the club in terms of wages. Whereas Manning he said he's more open to loans, didn't he, in a recent interview last week, I think, when he was asked about it. It could be the way out. I mean, you don't know what's on their shortlist, do you, for these strikers? It could be an option. I think he said permanent signings, then we look at the academy, and then we look at loans in that order, was what he said very recently. So he's not ruling it out, but I think he's preferring permanent signings above that. Although, like you said, looking in the academy, Seb Palmer-Holdham, he could be back up. Depends how he starts in the pre-season, but he's not been a starter, is he? And he could very well go out on loan if there's. We don't know yet. What are the striking options we've got?
No, Gary, what's your view on the loan market? Do you subscribe to what Nigel Pearson said about other, don't want to develop other teams' players? And when he talked about the dressing room and the culture not being right, bearing in mind when he said that, he had two of his lieutenants in there with Andy King and Matty, that, you'd have thought just their presence would have eliminated that cultural thing. So what's your view on loans?
No, I mean, I like Nigel, I respect Nigel, but that was one of the things I never got. I was really shocked when he said that about the culture. How can you not welcome somebody into your camp? They've got top class facilities, and they should be able to use them to the advantage, I think, to showcase to Premier League clubs. You all want to see the training facilities, and that should help City. And I can't for the life of us think why they couldn't integrate one or two really talented young loan players into the squad, and that is in seasons gone by and definitely going forward. It's worked for other clubs. Just thinking, the Sheffield United had the couple of lads from Man City, so why can't City do that?
And you think that's a good idea? You're nodding in agreement here.
Yeah, I think it's something that should be definitely considered. And some of the deals are hard to strike, and there's loan fees and and the wage structure can be, if they're playing, actually the wages are lower. It's when they're not playing when the price goes up, because that's often how these deals are negotiated.
A la Ryan Kent situation, when we blotted our copybook by not playing him then back in the day when he was here. Ian, loan market, could make a difference, couldn't it?
Well, you made a very good point. I think Paul actually made the point about, well, at least with Mabuda, he's a loan and we're not stuck with him on a 3-year contract. You imagine we could have gone out and bought him, and I told you before from sources in France, his club want 2 million quid for him. Right. Now, before anybody starts panicking, no, I mean, City ain't going to pay it, and I can't think anybody would, based on what they've seen. I mean, he's actually played more games for Scotland under 21s in City, hasn't he? Or more, he's had more time on the pitch, and I think that was only one game. So, no, I mean, I think had we not had Tammy Abraham when we had him, we'd have been relegated that season. Sure as eggs is eggs, we'd have gone down that season, and we didn't stay up but by many points with him. So yeah, if we can go out and find them, but they will. I mean, there's lads in Premier Division teams have never kicked a ball outside under 21 football, apart from possibly they might have played for England under 19s or under 21s, earning 25 grand a week.
Yeah.
Then there's not always a loan fee. That is something that it can and can't happen. But if you've got to pick up their salary and it's 25 grand a week, and that's well above the average at Bristol City, well above it. But I mean, Gary could probably say better than me. If I'm that player and I come in, Gary, and I'm earning, let's say, twice as much as you, but I score 20, 25 goals in a season and the team gets promoted, do you feel like giving me a cuddle or stabbing me?
No, it's to your benefit, because then if you get promoted, then you get your 25 or your 30 or your 40 grand a week. Thank you very much. So there's pros.
That's what I thought.
You know, if they're not a gamble, not if you do your homework. Don't ask us who they are, but I know for a fact that there's plenty of young, talented players in that Premier League that will be available to go out on loan, and it's just identifying the right one and then get them into your club.
And what about going abroad? What about going abroad, Gary?
You've got to now. How clubs do recruitment, and I've seen it firsthand. You know, the Premier League clubs have got everything covered. Every team in Europe, emerging talent teams will pick up on someone that's played 25 minutes, even if he's come on 5 times as a sub. They know who the out of contract players are. They know who the 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds are that are coming through. They know everything. So it's a difficult market. The different markets of, Middle Europe, Spain and France and Germany and the big clubs, there are lots of competition, because that's probably where the big clubs are based. But there's other sort of markets, sort of Romania, Hungary, places like that where you can find 1 or 2 bargains.
Can I just? The only thing with loans as well is you normally have to wait till right to the end of the transfer window after the Premier League club have had a look at them in pre-season and decided if they want to keep them or put them out on loan. So if we were going down that route, we could have already started the season and played.
Well, and that's the problem, Paul, isn't it? Because they've talked about getting their business done early, and we all know when Steve Cottrell did that, different gravy, getting out of League One into this division. All right, conscious of time, guys.
Eddie Nketiah, isn't it?
Yeah, Eddie, not going to get you, as he's affectionately known on the forum. Paul, let's assume Twine comes. We've either persuaded Tommy to sign, or we've brought in another forward of some description. Let's assume there's one other left-sided, Gary said right-sided, Ian said bit of creativity, and we're not rocked by injuries, but let's say we've lost one of our centre halves, and that might be Zach Viney gets injured pre-season, but we've got Atco back and Naismith back. We've got the squad. Liam's had by then 2 windows. What's your expectation for next season?
If all those things were true, we'd have to be in the playoffs or at least in the playoff race
Okay.
for sure. Because
Yeah.
you'd be because that would be almost like the perfect transfer window for where we are at the moment, being realistic. And like we said earlier, you can't keep doing incremental change. At some point, we've got to come out of the mid-table club with Preston and get involved and have a run, at least be interested in the playoffs.
Yeah, so you mean hovering between 9th and 4th, 9th and 5th from the get-go almost, yeah?
Yes, I mean some teams come with a late run, don't they? When we did get there, and with Hull City, they had a fantastic run after Christmas to hold them right up from the bottom of the table. So not necessarily there from the start, although if we have a bad start, obviously things can look toxic within the fan base and the whole club. So if we're consistent and we're up there top half, and then we're moving to get towards the playoff, in the playoff race, we're interested in it, not just. I mean, at this season, there's been glimpses of it at very odd times, but then it's been out of our grasp, and the glimpses
we've almost been in it for hours, not days.
Yes.
So you feel like that. What do you think? What do you think, Gary? You know, when we interviewed Gavin Marshall, I said to him, "Are Bristol City happy being, you know, a sustainable mid-table championship club for another 9 seasons?" And he said, "Well, no, we're ambitious of the playoffs." So, what's going to change then? So, what do you think about next season as we sit here now?
Probably realistically, there's only probably two spots to aim for, which I think is similar to this season, which is probably 5th and 6th by the time everyone's been relegated and the teams are left behind with parachute payments. And you look at clubs progressing, coming from the league below. Portsmouth could be anything. Look what Ipswich did this year. Teams below us that I would expect to improve: Sunderland, Stoke, Sheffield Wednesday. There's 3, so that's going to make life tough. And if we keep saying we want to be in the playoffs or in the top half, then we're just repeating ourselves, probably what we said last season and the season before that. So I want to see City get in the top 6. I want to see them invest in some quality players in the summer and get the fan base really, really excited and get off to a flying start. And that's about as much as I would sort of commit to at the moment, because
well, the only thing that's certain there is the fans are engaged. We've just come off the back end of a season with highest crowds for 45 years, and season ticket sales seem as though they're going to at least equal. You talk about money being spent, you know, what sort of, how much would you like to see us go out and splash in the summer then to make that difference? Because that's what it boils down to. This club's
I don't
losing.
know how much. First of all, I don't know how much they're allowed to spend, so
Right.
I'm not sure exactly if anyone will put a figure on it. But if we got £25 million for Alex Scott, then it's got to be at least half of that. You know, 10, 12 million. Can they afford to do that? Would they commit to that? How much would they spend on one player? Is that going to be 2 or 3 players? But serious money. You know, you'd be competing against serious clubs, spending serious money next season, and you know something's got to change. The expectations of where City might be seen as a mid-table club, and lots of other Championship clubs probably look at City and think that's, you know, they'll finish in the middle of the table. We've got to get away from that.
Ian, that's a big number that Gary's spoken of there. Is an 8-figure sum that we know pretty much that this year ending June 30th, the financial year ending June the 30th, that's got the Scott money in there as a dollop, and it's going to probably, after adjustments, you know, we're going to be in a low loss-making situation, yeah. But sometimes you got to go for it, haven't you? And the sort of money Gary's talking about, and the somewhat austere approach that is total contrast to 18-19, you know, that's the sort of money we got to go for, isn't it? And
Well,
rather than trust your luck.
you mentioned 18-19 when we splashed the cash. And if you look at our record in the division, the highest we finished was 8th. And you couldn't accuse them of not splashing the cash there. I mean, they spent 8 million on Callas, 2.5 million on Casey Palmer, 2 million on Jada Silva, 2.5 million in big wages on Adam Nash. I could go on.
On Hannah Masengo, but
it wasn't. But there's a big thing about that transfer. It wasn't 8 million or anywhere near it. It was that's what City were going to get if they got promoted and if he'd done this.
But it was another couple of million in there, Ian. And if you look at
but it's the same thing. And those players, the thing they've got in common, Famara Zizou, 5 million, left the club for nothing. So it's not the amount you spend. Ipswich have showed that this year. They haven't gone out and spent big money. The guy that runs that from the Arizona Pension Fund, he didn't give Mark Ashton the kind of money that Steve Lansdowne did. Nowhere near it. He did agree to pay massive wages and pay some big wages for loan players. You know, like when they went out in the transfer window, when we got Deering Mibude, they got Kiefer Moore on 30-odd grand a week. So
that's what you need to do then, Ian, isn't it? You need to.
It may not. But what I'm saying is, Dave, you can do that. Hull, you've just said today about Rossini getting sacked. They spent 16 million and they were paying real big wages. The lad they got, Carvalho from Liverpool, is on almost 50 grand a week. Yeah. And they're paying all of that. So, and they didn't make it. So, I agree that I wouldn't call it a marquee signing. We've got to go. If we sign a 9 and a 10, and we spent somewhere between 7 and 10 million quid, I think that would be a massive statement if we don't sell anybody.
All right.
And because it's easy to say, well, we'll spend 8 million if we sold Tommy for 5. Then you're only spending 3 net, aren't you? Which I don't think that would totally excite the fans. But if we went out and spent that money and held on to Tommy, and I know that's what the club want to do. They want to hold on to Tommy and Joe Williams and do that as well. Then I think the fan base would say, well, hang on a minute. We've got the 9, we've got the 10. Like I said, I've got a sneaking feeling based on the signing of Mibude, and I know that didn't work out, that we'll go out and get an out-and-out right winger, or possibly even a left winger, as Gary said, somebody with a left foot.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. We don't know.
I think that would, in my view, next season, I want to see us in the top 10 all season, challenging for the playoffs, if not in the playoffs.
So that's
if we do those. If we do those things, if we make the signings, if we sort the injuries out. And then we're depending on a bit of good luck and bringing some good lads through from the under-18s and the under-21s. If we do all that, that's where I'd like to see us, and that's where I'd expect to see us.
It'd be really good if either Murphy or Stokes were breakout players that, and that would show what excellent recruitment has been in those cases. And as you say, recruitment. We need money. We want it to be a little bit more trust to luck. Shame about Liam being sacked. But as Gary said, there's no surprises with managerial sackings these days. And, it'll be interesting to see who they go out and get as his replacement. Because, Birmingham, that didn't go so well for them with Eustace going and the Rooney experiment.
Well, somebody was linking Steve Bruce with it today.
I think that was probably somewhat tongue-in-cheek there, but Steve Cooper maybe. Gary, Paul, Ian, thanks for your contribution. I'm doing another one of these with Dave Fevs and Ellie later this week, so we're trying to get some good balanced views. We're all going to go off and enjoy some summer sun, hopefully, but it'd be good to have you, Paul. Good to have you on, Gary. And, we will turn up at one of your pint nights with Jeff and get the inside track, Chatham House rules in a sporting dinner. I didn't know that existed. And Ian, good to see you got your replica 1976 shirt on there. But everybody who's tuned in, good number of you on a Tuesday night, just under 300. So thanks a lot for that. And as always, thanks for your support, everybody. All the best.
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
All the best.
Thanks,
God bless
David.
everyone.